Yes, indeed. This is Professor David Steinberg of SteinbergFiles.com talking to you today about how we no longer have freedom of speech. We no longer have a First Amendment. From this point forward, apparently, the Obama administration will be reviewing statements, determining what is acceptable and what is not. This all relates to a video, a cheaply made, inexpensive video posted on YouTube, which is about the Islamic prophet Muhammad, either a satire or a harsh criticism, depending on how one wants to look at such things. Headline today in the Daily Caller: Obama asks for suppression of anti-Islam video. Tommy Vietor, a spokesman for the National Security Council, told the Washington Post that the White House, quote, has reached out to YouTube to call the video to their attention and ask them to review it, whether it violates the site's terms of use. Isn't that terrific? How they've reached out. What great guys they are. No, they aren't. They're censors. This is the heavy hand of government censorship seeking suppression of ideas. In doing this, they are complying with a request, I shouldn't say with a request, with a demand from the Muslim Brotherhood, which apparently now sets policy in the United States, at least under the Obama administration. From the Muslim Brotherhood, the ruling party in Egypt, thanks to President Obama's superb foreign policy. Hurting the feelings of 1.5 million Muslims cannot be tolerated. Oh God, we hurt their feelings. Cannot be tolerated. We demand that all those involved in such crimes be urgently brought to trial. And I guess this is the Obama plan, to the extent they have one. There's a word for what the Obama administration is doing here besides unconstitutional. It was a phrase coined in response to Neville Chamberlain's actions, which prior to World War II. It's called appeasement. Rather than explaining to the Muslim Brotherhood that we value freedom of speech and that's our policy, we can't do that. We must appease them. After all, they're our friends. It's only the radical Islamic jihadists in Libya who killed Americans. They are our great friends. I wonder how far this appeasement policy goes. I don't really know much of anything about Islamic law. What's it have to say with what is called the right to choice, or the right to an abortion? Is that permitted under Islamic law? And if not, what do you think, Mr. President, and your Democratic allies? What do you guys think? Do we need to stop permitting abortions in this country because they may hurt someone's feelings in the Islamic community? What do you guys think about this? Something I do know about is the First Amendment, though, and I'll give you a very explicit example. Go on YouTube. How long is it going to take you to find a video that denies that the Holocaust ever happened? An anti-Semitic video. I would say all of 10 seconds. There's a prominent piece posted by Ahmadinejad, the Iranian, whatever he wants to call himself, president, that denies the Holocaust ever happened. Well, I'm a Jew. I'm an American Jew. My ancestors were Russian Jews. And one of my grandfather's family, his sister, was murdered by the Nazis in the Holocaust. I find such videos incredibly offensive. But I have no doubt that there is a right to publish videos of that sort on YouTube and elsewhere. It's called the First Amendment. And we don't permit censorship. Because once it starts, where does it end? Maybe my videos ought to be censored. Maybe I ought to be fired. What do you think, Mr. President? Would that be a good idea? What do you think? Maybe we ought to prohibit any kind of speeches from Mr. Romney. Maybe we ought to make sure that people only vote Democrat. I could go on and on. By the way, aren't you impressed the way the ACLU has jumped up and defended First Amendment rights? If the Nazis want to march, the ACLU is all over that. If some city, God forbid, puts up a cross, the ACLU is suing them in a heartbeat. But here we have the President of the United States seeking to censor YouTube, and what does the ACLU say? Nothing. How about my wonderful colleagues, all of these law professors who were so outraged that the Bush administration would put terrorists in Guantanamo Bay, that the Bush administration would detain terrorists who had murdered Americans. This was torture. What do you hear from them about this explicit example of government censorship? I've heard nothing. I guess this is great. I guess this is the wonderful new regime. I've got to admit, I'm impressed with the strides that President Obama has made in shredding our Constitution. Limits on federal power, those are gone. With the Obamacare decision, we can thank our great Chief Justice John Roberts for that. No more limits on federal power. The First Amendment is fairly gone. Is gone. Freedom of speech is gone. Why don't we just say? Why don't you just come out and say it, Mr. President? We don't have a constitution anymore. Your regime is going to decide everything from now on. That's all I can take away from this. One thing that is very clear. You have a government that is seeking to conduct censorship, and no one in the mainstream media, no one in the civil rights industry says a thing. This is Professor David Steinberg.